Blog Talk Radio.
Vote for, and no senator should vote for, an individual nominated by any president who is not fully committed to fairness and impartiality toward every person who appears before them. In my view, such a philosophy is disqualifying.
When President Obama appointed Sonia Sotomayor to be the Supreme Court Justice, her qualifications quickly got lost. Everything was focused on her race and her gender. So many white people were quick to just call it out as reverse racism. But that whole notion of reverse racism is really problematic, and here's why. First of all, it assumes that people of color are just underqualified and assumes that white people are entitled. Second, it also assumes that we don't have systemic racism, where we have a system that's full of inequalities. Just look at the facts. If you look at anything from infant mortality rates to life expectancy rates and everything in between, it's also racially skewed. That is systemic racism. Racism between individuals is really prejudice, and prejudice can go any direction. It can go forward, sideways, and especially backwards. But that's different from systemic racism, and the two can't be equated. Affirmative action is really designed to make the system fair. It's to make up for a lot of the inherent inequities that are built into the system. Affirmative action is not reverse racism. In fact, it's remedying racism. So the bottom line is that the whole concept of reverse racism is really a way of just taking away attention from the big white elephant in the room, which is systemic racism.
Context of White Supremacy, Gus T Renegade, and Justice in for another program to share constructive information on racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works. Thank you all for tuning in to the broadcast. I hope that you are receiving constructive information every time you tune in. I hope it's information that is useful, clears up confusion, perhaps gives you some books to read. Definitely a supporter of reading, and gives you some, things to think about in terms of what you want to do, how you want to go about replacing the system of racism immediately. Again, we're fundraising for the duration of January 2011, and since we are requesting that folks invest to help us continue the effort, we will be broadcasting every day for the month. So we'll be back tomorrow. Evening show will be back tomorrow, which will be Saturday, January the 22nd, 9 p.m. Eastern showtime, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, and 6 p.m. Pacific. Really looking forward to tomorrow's broadcast with Brother Polite. In addition, if you could please support the program, even if you cannot invest or if you don't want to pick up a book from the wish list, please share links to the program, put it on your Facebook page. You can tweet it, all that good stuff, names, put it on your social network. If you have a web page or a blog, you can. They have a widget where you can put the player for the show up. They have so many options. You can put an individual player if it's a specific episode. If you really liked when Tim Wise was here, you can put a player for that specific program or any of the other folks who have been guests on the program. They have one that will play the most recent program. They have a lot of different options. So you can post the player. All that helps. It helps to get the word out. If you think what we're doing here at the Cows is constructive. I want to hop right to today's broadcast. Before I do, definitely remind me, I told you all I'm trying to do a better job around checking the news and making sure that I'm ready to roll with regards to what's happening in the news. And there was a news report about American Idol. We had just been talking about Top Model and all these different sorts of television programs. And American Idol, they had Steven Tyler. He was making some comments, sexual comments about a 16-year-old on the program. And I don't know, I don't watch the show, but I just thought it was really interesting. And someone just wrote a blog about it and how they thought it was another example of pedophilia in the news. So make sure you remind me. I'll share once we're all done, keeping my eyeball on the news. With that said, we'll move to our guest for today's program. He is the director of the Midwest office of the Applied Research Center and program director of the Racial Justice Leadership Action Network. He coordinated the National Erase Initiative, Expose Racism, and Advance School Excellence, and has authored several reports on race and equity issues. In addition to being white, Mr. Keleher has adopted a black male child. He wrote a really interesting article about, his transracial adoption experience. It is linked in the description for this program. Actually, the picture for this program is linked. You can click the picture, and it'll take you right to the article. The title of the article is White Dad, Black Son, and Raising Kids in a Colorblind World. Really interesting essay, and looking forward to discussing the article and exchanging views on racism. I will double check to see if our guest is with us, but our guest for the program, Mr. Terry Keleher, and I'm not sure which line he would be on. Nobody has a hand up, so I'm kind of confused. If maybe he's not on the line, could be just listeners. Let's see. I guess if you're on the line, Mr. Keleher, if you could press 1, that would be great. Then I would know which line you're on so I can get you on the program. I think we have him right there. Mr. Keleher?
Yes.
Okay, outstanding. Thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us. Glad to have you on the line, sir.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here for the conversation.
Outstanding. For folks, if they haven't read that article, which again is linked right here in the description, you can just click the photo and it'll take you to the article at Color Lines. If you could give them a little bit of information about what you do at Color Lines, and just whatever you think would be helpful to understand for this program.
Sure. So I work with the parent organization of Color Lines, which is the Applied Research Center, and we're a national racial justice think tank, and we do a lot of work around journalism, policy issues, research, and leadership development. Basically, we try and inform people about issues of race, politics, and culture, and we also try to equip people with the skills and the capacity to challenge racism and to advance racial equity. Our publication is called colorlines.com. It's an online news site. It features daily news about race, politics, and culture, and it features a lot of different writers and perspectives that often aren't carried in the mainstream press. So it's a great source for getting good information about race issues and some good analysis from some unique perspectives. And my role at the Applied Research Center is I'm a racial justice educator and program director. I work with organizations around the country that are trying to address systemic racism and help them develop the analysis, the skills, the strategies to actually move towards some proactive action to address racial equity.
Wow. And that was, you said the organization is a national racial justice think tank.
That's right.
And that organization, again, the Applied Research Center. Wow. Very interesting. We're going to get, I guess, more into that as we roll in the program. Before we get started, for folks, hopefully they're listening here at Blog Talk, so they've seen the photo, but in case they haven't, you are a white man. Is that accurate?
That's right.
Okay. You also, in your article, you also classify yourself as gay. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Okay. This program, Context of White Supremacy, I have unfortunately concluded that we are in a global system of racism, white supremacy. I use those two terms interchangeably, racism and white supremacy. I use the exact same definition for both terms. That definition is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe that such a system exists, and do you think that definition is accurate?
I believe that there's a global system of racial inequality. I think a lot of the inequality can often occur without intentionality and malice. Some of it is definitely intentional and malicious, but I don't think that a lot of people are necessarily willing accomplices to trying to be abusive or trying to subjugate others. I think that they're often naively complicit through their silence, through their inaction, and sometimes just through their naivete. They don't choose to pay attention to issues of race, particularly white people who think that it's not their problem, so they don't learn anything about it, and they don't take responsibility for the inequalities. So basically, I agree with the definition of the system of global inequality based on race, but I think I would disagree that it's all intentional or malicious or consciously abusive.
That's interesting. I hope people who listen to the program consistently, you're supposed to be able to pick out trends. That is a major trend on this program. The majority of guests who have been on the broadcast, and we are 3 away from broadcast number 300, the majority of folks have agreed with the definition, but there have been a significant number of people who have said almost exactly what you just said about intentionality. And I roll out my speech. I guess I should have a codified response for this by now. I didn't say anything about intentionality. I didn't say that white people are doing this intentionally. What I said was that the white people who practice and maintain the global system of white supremacy are dedicated to doing so, which is a little different from intent and intentionally doing this. A little different. I think you can be dedicated to something without necessarily being conscious that you're doing it. And at the end of the day, all of this is really irrelevant because the system does exist. I think you said you agreed with that. The system does exist, and as a victim of that system, whether it's being done intentionally, whether it's being done unconsciously, it's here, and we need to be doing something about it. The result, in my opinion, the result is the same regardless whether white people are doing this, thinking about it every second of every day, or whether they don't really think about it at all, they're not really informed. And there's a lot of evidence that when white people do become informed, when people do make an effort to inform white people of the system, that they really have no interest in dismantling it. And they work against people who do try to dismantle it. So that just makes me conclude that the white people who practice this system are dedicated to it. Does that make logical sense, sir?
It does. And I think that that is the case often. Those who even do come to understand the system are often so invested in it that they're unwilling to do anything to change it. So I believe that what is a more useful focus rather than looking at people's attitudes or intentions is to look at people's actions and impacts, for those are really what matter the most. Whether it's intentional or not is actually not the main point. It's really what are the impacts of their actions and who's harmed and who's benefited by those impacts.
I could not agree more, sir. I'm with you 110% on that one, just looking at what's happening and what is the result of what happens, specifically when we're talking about people. What are they doing and what is the result of what they're doing? Before I pitch to my co-host, I did have one request. I try to be, I'm very much engaged in having constructive, courteous, challenging conversations around racism, white supremacy, and I hope today will qualify. Hopefully we'll all be challenged and a little uncomfortable or a lot uncomfortable with the program, and I think that means we're doing constructive work. One request that I have, the term fair, it was in the sound clip that I played where you were giving your commentary on reverse racism and the logical breakdown of why we don't have reverse racism. We have people that are not willing to truthfully acknowledge the system of white supremacy. I think that term fair supports racism, white supremacy. We have a term that can be used to signify beauty, logic, correctness, being valid, reasonable, and I just don't, and white. And I just think that it implies, in a not so subtle way, it relates, it connects being white with being correct, being valid, being just, being beautiful, and at the exact same time, anyone who is not white is not logical, is not valid, is not reasonable, is not beautiful. And I really have made a consistent effort to inform people of that connection and why I think we shouldn't use that term. We should try to use other words that don't have that racial connotation to support white supremacy. Does what I just said make sense? And would you be willing to not use the term fair? I'd like to say not use that term anymore at all when you discuss racism, white supremacy, or anything else because it supports racism, but at least not use it for this program.
I'm happy to go along with your guidelines. I don't quite understand your challenge of that term, but I'm happy to do my best to go along with your wishes on that, and I'll certainly think about what you described there.
Okay. I will be brief. I don't want to hog all the time, but this is very important, so I will take 40 seconds to see if I can do a better job explaining. You've heard some of the so-called fairy tales where they say who's the fairest of them all, who is the most attractive of them all. Is that accurate?
Sure. And
okay.
By fairness, if you're referring to it, the definition as it relates to beauty, I don't believe that was the way I use the term fairness. It's also a term that is synonymous with justice, and that is the sense that I use it.
Exactly. What I'm saying is the term is synonymous with justice and being white and being beautiful and being reasonable. And I'm saying that when you use that term, even though you say I'm using it for justice, black people are not treated fairly. And you say, they're not treated justly. That's all well and dandy, but I guess I'm saying that subconsciously, consciously, because that term is also associated with being white, when you say black people are not being treated fairly, you really could say that black people are not being treated whitely. They're not being treated as though they are white, and it would still be accurate. That's what I mean about the close and intimate nature of the word fair being related to white and justice and beauty and correctness. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Justice, if you have some questions you would like to ask our guest, your line is open. Please go right ahead. It was a delay. We didn't hear anything you just said, so if you want to rewind and start over again, please. Sorry about that.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Good morning, and I'm very, very tired. I just woke up. Preferably, I do not like to do shows in the morning. Afternoon and night is cool. My first question I wanted to ask the guests is, have you ever had a sexual intercourse with a non-white person?
Yes, I have.
Why are you gay?
Why?
Yes.
As far as I understand it, I believe I was born this way, and I don't believe I ever had a choice. The choice I did have was whether to act upon it and whether to be out about it. But in terms of being gay or not being gay, I don't believe that was ever a choice for me. And I think it's probably comparable to most straight people, where I doubt that most of them would consider their sexual orientation a choice. I believe most of them are pretty much hardwired that way.
Do you think that all white people are gay?
That all white people are gay?
Yes.
No, I don't. I think there's a wide range of variation among white people and of people of color. And people are gay, they're straight, they're bisexual, they're transgender, they're intersexual. There's many other variations on people's gender and sexuality.
Very interesting. I don't have any more questions. I don't have any more questions at this time.
Cool. Context of White Supremacy. Before I hop into the article, very important, I support you wrote a piece with some suggestions for how to deal with racism, white supremacy, I guess things that you've kind of learned as you have taken on this journey, adopting a black male child. One of the things, no name calling, I support that wholeheartedly, and as you already shared on the program, focusing more on what people are doing and the result that has, specifically what white people are doing and the impact that has on non-white people, victims of white supremacy. I wanted to ask a very important question. I think it's important for non-white people to understand that white people are doing things, that white people are responsible for the system of white supremacy, and a tool that I use to kind of make sure that non-white people keep that in mind. I just ask white people, are you a racist? And the definition that I use, a white person who consciously and or unconsciously, directly and or indirectly mistreats someone because they are not white. With that definition, are you a racist?
I would say yes. I would say that there's so much socialization that I've taken in along, in the public school system, in the communities, in the media, that unconsciously there's certainly racial bias that I harbor. I do my best to try and become conscious of it and to counteract it when I am conscious of it, but I'm sure that there's many instances where I'm completely unconscious or still completely clueless about certain dynamics, and I try and commit myself to learning and to taking action when I am aware.
Gus?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just ask this one quick question really quick, and then can you go back with your questions?
Help yourself.
Okay. When you and Gus were speaking about the word fair earlier, you said that it refers to beauty. Do you mean white beauty or just beauty?
Are you talking to me or the guest?
The guest, because he was the one who used it.
I think that the host had used the term beauty, and then I had echoed that term. I think that it's a.
I don't think Gus used the term beauty at all.
And if he didn't, then I would be mistaken. But I understand the distinction he was making in the terminology, which was more of a reference to the complexion of one's skin, and that can then be associated with some of the other meanings of that same word. So I think that I was trying to understand, his association with that term as a marker of one's lightness of skin color.
Okay, so you're saying that you mean by white? Do you mean by beauty or white beauty? Can you please pick one?
Well, I don't think that anyone's skin color is more beautiful than anyone else's. I understand that that's not what the popular media tries to instill in us, but my own notion of beauty is not about skin color.
Okay.
I did want to, just in the interest of being correct, it's not my notion of the term fair. This is in the dictionary. You can look this up, any website. You can get an Oxford dictionary that's not abridged. You'll see all of the definitions that are associated with the term fair. If you get a quality dictionary, I suspect the term fair probably will take up a good page, maybe a half a page, just defining all the different uses of the term. I'll just give you two really quick before I proceed. The first definition, how about this? Free from bias, dishonesty, or injustice. Then if you keep going down, I'm looking at dictionary.com. If you go all the way down to definition number 12, and there are more, you get of a light hue, not dark, white. So that's what I'm saying. It's not my association. It's in the dictionary.
Sure.
At any rate, the article that you wrote, wow. It's at Color Lines. Again, make sure you can check it out. White Dad, Black Son, and Raising Kids in a Colorblind World. And he has colorblind in quotes for folks who haven't read the report. And it's at colorlines.com. Again, if you're listening at Blog Talk Radio, you can just click the photograph of Mr. Keleher and his son, and it will take you directly to the article. If you click his name, it will take you to colorlines.com, and you can see all of the other articles that he has posted at that website. So check them out. But this report, can you talk to our listeners just the process when you made up your mind that I assume this was a conscious decision to adopt a black male child. Can you kind of share some of your thoughts with us?
Sure. There were a lot of considerations that went into that decision. I looked at a lot of the options, and I think I had to weigh both external factors about the different adoption options and about different parenting options, and to look at whether there was an option where you didn't reinforce a lot of white supremacy and racism out there. And I think that after reflecting on some of the external factors as well as reflecting on who I am and what I was prepared and committed to doing as a parent, I felt that raising an African-American child could be a good fit, and that is what I chose to do.
Well, I'm just reading. This is from that article. You wrote, "Viewing me with suspicion is justifiable when you look at the big picture, where even well-intentioned white people still don't have the best track record for effectively dealing with," and I substituted because I think the more accurate term would be racism, white supremacy, not white privilege. That being the case, I think you would agree logically, I am suspicious of you. You admitted to being a racist. We are in a system of white supremacy. I'm trying to understand how this, an admitted racist white man who is also gay, adopting a black male child, how does that solve problems? How does that work against racism, white supremacy?
I think it's a good question, and again, I understand your suspicion and validate that. I think that a lot of white parents who adopt children of color go into it without having done a lot of thought or preparation around the dynamics of racism. And so many think that all they have to do is provide a loving, safe, secure, nurturing home, and the racism dynamic will just take care of itself. They can, they believe, ignore it and try and just pretend it doesn't exist. That is not the approach I took. In fact, I went in with my eyes as wide open as they could be about the realities of racism, knowing that there is a widespread system of inequity and discrimination and injustice based on race. And I was committed to taking on that challenge to address that. And that is something that I have worked most of my adult life on, is fighting injustices and addressing racism and poverty and things like that. I also felt that the fact that I am gay gave me some different sensitivities to some issues, even though the issue of sexual orientation and race are very different issues. They also share some similarities. I think that people of color and gay people face a lot of prejudice and discrimination and a lot of hatred. And some of that is interpersonal prejudice, and some of that is systemic discrimination and injustice. And through my own experience, I came to be aware of some of the ways that prejudice and discrimination operate, as well as some of the ways that privilege and power operate. So I bring some of those sensibilities into the work of parenting, and I know that it's a path and a journey that could be fraught with many problems, but at the same time, I'm committed to addressing those issues as they come up, and have done that, and will continue to do that.
Context of white supremacy. Again, I should have said this earlier, but it's fine. I'm bringing it up now because it's also relevant now. It'll be relevant for the duration of the program. Speaking with Mr. Terry Keleher, admitted racist, white supremacist, white man who has adopted a black male child. You said that, you have been infected with the disease of racism, white supremacy as a white person in a system of white supremacy, and that you most likely still have unconscious evidence of that programming impacting how you think and how you function. I suspect that you most likely consciously at times are practicing racism. I strongly suspect that to be the case, and even during this program, in fact, I would say specifically comparing so-called homosexuals to the way that they are treated to the way that non-white people, black people, are treated within a system of white supremacy. I would say that would be one example of what I suspect could be conscious racism, white supremacy. I did want to ask, at what age did you adopt this child? At what age did he come into your care legally?
I believe it was just before my 45th birthday.
Wow. Now that, I don't know. You all can pick. I was talking about the child, not you. What age was the child when you adopted him legally?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, my son was a newborn when I adopted him.
Wow. I mean, how newborn? How many? Are we talking months, days? What are we talking?
I was outside the delivery room when he was born.
Whoa. Wow. Wow. That is incredible. Wow. How did this come about? Did you...
Pardon?
What?
Go ahead, sorry.
I'm stunned. How long had you known his mother?
About 3 months prior to that. I worked with an adoption agency, and I chose to do what's called an open adoption. That is where the adoptive parents or parent can come to know the birth parent or parents. And the way that I chose to do this was that typically with open adoptions, the adoption agency will present a birth mother with options. So when a birth mother voluntarily chooses the option of adoption, they will often find an adoption agency or a service and get in touch with them, let them know about the pregnancy, and then request to work with them on an adoption placement. And what the process is that the adoption agency then shows the birth mother different options for actual families that are interested in adopting her child, or in the case of sometimes the father is involved, sometimes not. So it may be the profile might be presented to two of the birth parents. Sometimes it's just a single mother, as in the case with my child. And in that case, the birth mother reviewed different profiles, and she selected my profile, and the adoption agency then introduced us at a meeting at the adoption agency where we got to know each other, and then we could decide from there whether we wanted to proceed with the adoption plan. And when we met, we hit it off very well, struck up a really good and close relationship, or at least a friendship, and she decided to move forward with having me be the adoptive parent. I also chose a local adoption. I wanted the possibility of the child to have contact with the parent. I wasn't too keen on like transnational adoptions or adoptions that occur over large distances, because then the child and sometimes the birth parents don't have as much likelihood for contact if that's what they choose to want to have. And I was very much interested in a situation where both the birth parents and the child could have the option for contact. And that is exactly the way it has unfolded. We have a good relationship with the birth mother, and we see her whenever she wants to get together and when we're able to see her. And my son knows exactly who she is, and it's like having a special aunt in his life. And I think the birth mother is very happy to know that her son is well taken care of and is developing well, and I think it gives her a lot of satisfaction to know that she made a good choice for the placement of her child.
Double whammy.
I'm just trying to process all this. Wow, I feel like a ton of bricks fell on me. Like, wow, okay. Do you think in a system of white supremacy for a pregnant black female to willingly give her child to an admitted racist, do you see anything incorrect, illogical about that?
Well, the whole system of white supremacy is incorrect and illogical in some ways, so I think, therefore, every component of it could be dissected and you could find the fallacy and illogic of all of it. So I think that the fact that she was the one who chose the option of adoption, and she was the one who chose the family that she chose, at least that gave her some agency in those decisions. But I'm not naive to know that her decisions were limited, based on her economic status. She would have had a hard time raising another child, but the reality, the truth of it was she really just wasn't interested in raising another child. She already had some children that she was raising, and she really had basically had enough of that, and but nor was she interested in terminating the pregnancy. It gave her a lot of satisfaction to be able to place a child for adoption and to be able to provide something that another family was looking for, which was a child, and she was able to be part of that process. So that gave her a sense of gratitude and meaning. So I think that, to answer your question, again, the whole system is fraught with all kinds of problems, and we have to figure out our best way to maneuver through it. And I think that to try our best to do that with consciousness and with integrity is the challenge that we face. And I think that was what I was striving for, was to try and figure out a way to do that with some integrity.
from an admitted racist in a system dominated by white supremacy? I don't believe you answered the question. If you did, I might have just missed it. The question: do you think a black female voluntarily giving her child to an admitted racist, do you think that is illogical? Do you think that there's something incorrect about that?
Well, the way I answered the question was to say that I think that you could dissect just about any interaction in our society and say that
I heard that
there's something.
I heard that it was just
so
I would appreciate
that when you apply it to this situation, there is again much you could find that you could criticize. Definitely, yes, but at the same time, there is also many positive things as well. So I think that...
Like what? Could you give us an example of some of the positives of an admitted racist adopting a black child? Okay.
Yeah, I think the birth mother is very satisfied with the option she chose. I think my son is developing very well and has a pretty good life. So I think from that perspective, I think that there's a lot that has worked well about this arrangement. But again, I think that there's a lot you can still critique about it, and that's okay to be critical if that's what you want to do. I have critiques myself of the whole systems and arrangements, and so I still think that those are some of the waters that we swim in. For example, I have a lot of critiques about our public school systems and the curriculum and the tracking that goes on, the ability grouping that goes on, and the discipline that goes on, and everything like that. At the same time, that is the institution that we have to deal with a lot of times, unless you can afford private education or choose to go that route. But there's all kinds of critiques about the public school system. Yet I still send my son to the public school system, and while he's in the public school system, I do what I can to see if I can, try and make things more fair, or to try and advocate for...
Oh, you used the word fair.
Oh, you got me. Thank you for pointing that out. Sorry about that.
Oh, please continue. Just that word fair, we got to be, on our game about that.
Yep. So I'll continue to try and not use it, but that's a new thing for me.
Wow. I anticipated that. I could have been pretty boastful in saying I anticipated you were going to have some trouble with that, because you use that term a lot. And that term sticks out to me. If you all want to know some of the things that Gus pays attention to, use of that word fair, alarms, all kinds of alarms go off, particularly if the person uses it a lot. Like, if it's a white person and they consistently are saying fair, be on your game around those folks. And I also wanted to point out, just paying attention to words, you said you did an open adoption with his mother. You were there when he was born, your child, your adopted black male son. And you said it's like he's still able to have contact with his biological mother, and that it's like having a nice aunt. And I just thought that was, wow, incredible, particularly in the context of white supremacy. I know, at least according to my own research, for many years, white people would not reference black people with an official title. They wouldn't give them the respect of saying sir or ma'am. They wouldn't give them those titles that was reserved for white people, racists, white supremacists. And one of the other ways they would address black people in addition to boy and girl would be uncle and aunt. And I just thought that was interesting. Wow. Dorothy Roberts, remember she was here for past listeners, killing the black body in the attack on black motherhood. Not a mom, an aunt. I just thought that was very interesting. Wow, just very interesting. Very interesting program all the way. Again, our guest, Mr. Terry Keleher, and I hope we are true to our word, challenging, courteous, constructive dialogue with a high level of suspicion, even with your own logic, a high level of suspicion. You said from your perspective that your son, he's developing well and he has a good life. The situation, obviously there are aspects of it that are not logical, not correct. We're in a system dominated by, illogic and white supremacy. Your perspective is that of an admitted racist. So do you have any outside means of gauging your son's progress and how he's developing?
Well, I live in a very multiracial neighborhood. We go to a multiracial school. We have all kinds of friends who are of different races. In the class he's in, and throughout most of his preschool and elementary school, he's been around a lot of other African Americans. So I think that just the acquaintances, the people in our daily lives, my coworkers, there's many people around me who I am in conversation with and who aren't afraid to hold me accountable at times. So I think that I do have a network of people who I trust and I respect, who I am in communication with around a lot of issues of race.
Wow. My co-host is 11. How old is your adopted son now?
6.
He's 6?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, so young. Wow. He looks older in the picture. We have had 6-year-olds on the program before. I would love to have them on the program at some point with you, just to hear from him, see how he feels. If you said you talked with your son about racism, is that correct?
Yes, we do talk a lot about racism.
I read one of the reports where you were giving an explanation of, you are classified as white, but your skin is not white. He is classified as black. His skin is brown. Do you have other examples of things that you tell him about how racism, white supremacy works?
We talk about the history of the civil rights movement, the history of slavery. We talk about the abuse by police of people of color. We talk about the way that people with darker skin are often not treated fairly in work situations.
Do you know what word you just said again?
I do believe, now that you pointed out, yes, I think I used the adverb version of the word.
Oh, I just want to point that out, please. So you talk with him about how how enforcement officers who are white mistreat non-white people. Other things you tell your son about racism? Adopted son?
Just in our normal course of events, we will talk about different things as they come up. I try and normalize the whole conversation of racism, just as we talk about nature and we talk about other kinds of things in this world. I think that is part of the reality that I have a responsibility to help him be able to interpret and navigate. So we make that part of our regular conversation.
Does he know you're a racist?
No, I don't think he has an understanding of that. I think that that's a little tougher of a concept for someone of that age to grasp. I think the whole notion of implicit bias, which is another term for unconscious racism, I think that's still not even understood well by a lot of adults. And I think only recently, where there's a lot of new evidence-based research that's going on around the whole dynamic of implicit bias, is that becoming more understood. And what's interesting and insidious about that whole dynamic of implicit bias is that because people of all races are being raised in a very racist society, that even people of color can have bias. It's not the same as the kind of racial bias that white people might have. But if you look at, for example, the Harvard University has this whole project called Project Implicit. It's a website where people can actually go to that website, and you're presented with a series of images to which you have to respond by pushing different keys on your keyboard. And millions of people around the world have taken this implicit bias test, and they can actually give you a score, like whether you're biased or not. And what's interesting is that while it's predictable that a lot of white people would have implicit bias, it also shows that people of color can have implicit bias as well about people of their own race and sometimes people of other races. And that's where you get the dynamic of sometimes even a black cop might treat a person of color with more force or less respect than they might a white person. Or a teacher, it could be a teacher of color, could teach or could discipline a student of color more harshly than a white student because of some of the same forces of prejudice and racism and white supremacy that they have also been socialized in this society to internalize some of that. So I don't expect my son to understand that yet. I think that different conversations, I have to figure out what's developmentally appropriate, what I think he's capable of understanding at each point of his development, just as I do any other thing. Conversations about all kinds of things need to be developmentally appropriate. So, but I do try and err on the side of trying to not wait till it's too late to actually introduce information a little before I think he's ready for it, just to start normalizing his awareness of that. So many things, I do talk to him at a fairly early age, and I think that surprises.
Oh, man, that's third time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I realize there's another meaning there, other than the ones we've just talked about. It's in the usage I just used it's a different meaning than the it's more of a relative kind of meaning. So that's certainly a challenge with this word because there are multiple meanings.
As I said, if you go to dictionary.com, you'll get past 16 definitions. I'm sure if you get a really expensive version, it can get super high. Always get past 25. I said, if you get an unabridged Oxford English Dictionary and look up FAIR, fair, I suspect you'll get a page or two of definitions. The main tool of the racists, white supremacists, is words, deceptive use of words to confuse and harm their victims. This big tool right here, that word, pay attention to that word fair. Very dangerous, make sure you don't miss that fair, of a light hue, not dark, white, as in fair skin. Don't miss that one. I wanted to, with your adopted black child, all of what you just said, I feel like could be you consciously practicing racism, white supremacy. As I said, we've had 6-year-olds on the program, 7-year-olds on the program. My co-host Justice, she started out here at 10. I don't think you need to get into implicit bias and all that for individuals of any age to understand what racism, white supremacy is and how it works. As I said, we've had non-white children on the program repeatedly who are your adopted son's age, and they clearly understand. System dominated by white people, set up to benefit them at all times, harm non-white people, especially black people. Got it. Be on the lookout for that happening, anywhere you go on the planet, all areas of activity, whether you're at the grocery store trying to get a job, you get hurt, you need to get, medical attention, always looking out for people being harmed because they are not white and white people getting the best of everything. It's real simple. And everything around you is going to support that idea that white is great, like the word fair, and non-white, especially dark, is not fair, not cool, all around you. I don't think it's that complicated. And I would love to have an opportunity to have you and your adopted son on the program. We have non-white children. It would be great. In fact, I wouldn't even have to talk. I could invite some of our non-white children, and they could just have a discussion. I can send you the archive. We had a conversation with a group of non-white children ages 12, 7, 6, and 11. And they discussed racism, white supremacy for an hour. They talked about Santa Claus. They talked about television programs that have racism in them, Disney movies. It was fantastic. I can send you that. We would love to have your adopted son be a part of the discussion. Is that something you'd be willing to do?
No, I actually don't think he's ready for that conversation, in this kind of forum. So I wouldn't have him do that. I don't know you, and I don't know, I don't know your audience, and it's just not something I would put a 6-year-old in that mix. So no, I wouldn't do that. Okay.
From the admitted racist, and I think I did say I could send you the program so that you could hear, but no worries. Justice, do you have questions you would like to ask Mr. Keleher?
When you talk to your black adopted child, do you say racism or white supremacy?
I normally say racism. I don't believe I've used the term white supremacy with him yet. And again, it's just more of a what I think that developmentally where he's at. I think that term supremacy is probably a more complex term at this point for him. But we do use the word racism, and in the way I use the term, it is synonymous with white supremacy.
Just for listeners, is that it's best to teach your child yourself to use terms, white supremacy, racism, any term that you can think of, and don't be afraid of just learning words.
Mm-hmm. Was that a question? I'm sorry.
No, that was a statement. I'm done. Sorry, no. Thank you.
Context of White Supremacy. Please, like I said, support the program. You can invest and you can post links to the program. I think we're getting very constructive information. I hope sticking to it, challenging, constructive, and candid. Please tweet the program, Facebook it, share it with other non-white people if you think it's constructive. As an admitted racist who is also gay, I wanted to ask, in terms of the limit, I've had other individuals on the program who classify themselves as so-called homosexuals, and I try to figure out, where are the boundaries if so-called homosexual behavior, if that's acceptable and everybody should be okay with that, where are we drawing the line at with regards to sexual conduct? I'm just trying to get an understanding of what's okay and what is not okay. Do we say the line is just at rape? Or, if someone says I'm into bestiality, if they say I'm into polyandry, having a bunch of wives or a bunch of husbands, age of consent, just where is the boundary for you?
I think that when there's consensual interactions that are not harmful to each other or others, and I think when there's honesty and integrity to those interactions, then I think those are acceptable. But I'm sure there's all kinds of gradations and exceptions, and I think that it's difficult to draw lines. But I certainly think that we as a society have come up with some safeguards that make a lot of sense to make sure that children are protected, and to make sure that when there is abuse and when there's rape and things like that those are effectively dealt with. But I do believe that consensual and safe and honest relations between adults, whether they are heterosexual or homosexual relations, I think those are acceptable.
Okay. I'm just trying to get an idea of where your safeguards are, just your perspective. Bestiality. If someone says, I'm into, I like this sheep over here, Matilda the sheep, she's great. It's not harming anyone. I'm not being harmed. I can offer my own consent. The animal's not being harmed. I'm not killing the animal or anything. We have a great relationship. Bestiality, is that okay? No worries there?
No, I don't believe you can have a consensual interaction with an animal. So no, it's not okay.
Okay, so that's one safeguard. I could see people being upset around that, though, around the issue of consent and saying, if two individuals, a male and a female, or a male and a female can say we're okay, why can't I say, I'm okay with, an animal? I can see some people arguing pretty vigorously against that. But, okay, so bestiality is no. Polyandry, having, multiple wives or multiple husbands, is that okay if it's consensual?
I don't believe so, but, that's my opinion, but I don't believe so.
Okay. Interesting. Have you paid attention to, in my opinion, the system of racism, white supremacy? It has a long history of emasculating, effeminizing black males. I'll just make that as a statement flat out. In your research as a part of the National Racial Justice think tank, do you think that's an accurate statement?
That it effeminizes black males?
Yes, sir. The system of white supremacy has a history of effeminizing, emasculating black males. Yes, sir. Do you think that's true?
Just to make sure I understand what you're asking, you mean you think the system makes them seem more effeminate
And
less masculine, more
masculine.
Exactly.
More masculine?
Less masculine.
Less masculine.
More feminine. Yes. That the system has a history of doing this to black males. Yes. Do you think that is a true statement?
No. I think it's more the opposite. The images that I see in the media tend to hypermasculize often black men. I think they are often portrayed as more dangerous, as more sexual, and I think it would be just the opposite. And I think even sometimes the kind of popularization of some types of rap and hip-hop music where they commercialize and commodify the gangsterization of black men. I think, again, that's sort of like this thug-like hyper-masculine model that they can have all the women in the world that they want, they can have all the weapons in the world that they want. So I actually think that it's just the opposite from my perspective, from what you've described. But on the other hand, if you're talking about effeminizing the black men by making them less powerful, sort of in relationship to families, I think that again, systematically, black men are often like marginalized from what the mainstream sees as the kind of model family that often involves a monogamous heterosexual unit with kids, all that. I think that there's often a lot of baggage that's put upon black men as if they don't have a productive and constructive role to serve in that family structure. So, that's how I see it.
I do see what you're talking about in terms of the beastly, hyper-sexualized black male image. I do see that. So I'm not arguing against that, but I'm saying, strongly asserting that I think there is a pretty weighty amount of evidence that would suggest that there is a long history of emasculating, effeminizing black males, as well as what you discussed. Just, to list off some examples, and you can tell me if what I'm saying makes sense after I give examples, if you think these examples contradict what I'm saying. I think there's, an indisputable track record of lynchings and castrations, which I would say is it doesn't get any more blatant than that in terms of decreasing masculinity when you're removing someone's penis and or testicles. Even in hip-hop music or rap music, whatever term we're going to use, when I see names like Little John, Little doesn't, in my opinion, Little does not give a connotation of manliness or manhood, and a John, that term has a connotation of a pimp. I don't think of that as an example of manhood either. I think of that as someone who degrades females, and I think that is tending towards emasculation, effeminization when there's a lot of degrading females, and I think that's what a lot of so-called hip-hop and rap music has become synonymous for, degrading black females. Some of the other names as well, Too Short, again, small, minimizing the black male figure, television programs, The Sweet Life of Cody Banks. Some of the children made that observation when they were on the program. You have a black male on that program who wears a dress. Long history of that. Flip Wilson back in the 70s, he used to play a character named Geraldine wearing a dress. You have Tyler Perry, $500 Million Enterprise, where he's mostly in a dress, black male in a dress for his films. Martin Lawrence, he has a film coming out next month with two black males in a dress, and that is no coincidence in my opinion. There are authors, Mr. Khalid Patterson, he did a book talking about the trend of having a black male in a dress for a major motion picture every February, Black History Month. And next month, Big Mamas, Martin Lawrence, two black males in a dress. That's for February 2011. My Princess Boy, it's just been going around in the media quite a bit. Young black male in a dress. I just see a lot of examples of this. You even said during the conversation, your adopted child, you got him, directly from his mother, no father figure. I would say the system has been doing this for a long time. Even the welfare and removal of the black father figure in order for black females to get benefits, resources from white people. Has anything that I just listed contradicted my statement that the system has a long track record of effeminizing, emasculating black males?
No, I understand what you're saying. I think that there's a lot of fear of powerful black men by white America, and so because of that fear, I think it results in some of the kinds of portrayals and actions that you've just described.
Okay. In my view, and again, I just want to read your paragraph. Viewing me with suspicion is justifiable when you look at the big picture, where even well-intentioned white people still don't have the best track record for effectively dealing with racism, white supremacy. Again, I changed the last term from white privilege to racism, white supremacy. In my view, logically speaking, I could see it being a part of the racist, white supremacist strategy for white people to adopt black children, non-white children, to further this process of ensuring we do not have powerful black males. Does that make sense? Not saying that you're doing it, just asking if the logic makes sense.
The logic, sure, it makes sense.
Okay.
And I also think the logic is that my son will be a powerful black male someday. So
said the admitted racist.
Yep.
Justice, do you have some other questions you would like to ask?
No, I do not have any at this time.
Groovy. The article again, for folks, if you have not read it, you should check it out. It's pretty interesting. If you're listening at Blog Talk Radio, you can just click the photograph of Mr. Keleher, and it will take you right to it. If you're not, you can go to colorlines.com and just do a site search for Terry Keleher, and the last name is Keleher, and it should pop up. You'll get to see all of his articles that he's written that are posted at colorlines.com. I want to hit the phone lines to see if anyone has questions. Please press 1 because there are a lot of people on the line. So, if you have a question, just press 1 and I will get to you. Person who called in, 5301. Do you have a question for Mr. Keleher? And please, before you ask your question, folks, if you're calling in, no speakerphone. It just adds a lot of distortion to the line. If you're listening at your computer, turn your computer volume down. Just want to preserve the quality of the broadcast. Thank you. And please, again, share the program. That would be super helpful. That's one way that you can make an investment. As often as possible, share links to the program so we can increase the number of folks who are tuning in and hopefully becoming more informed about racism, white supremacy. All right, 5301, your line is open. Did you have a question for our guest?
Yes, I do, and I want to thank your guest for joining the COWS this afternoon and sharing some information with us. I was listening to the interview and I missed a portion, so I don't know if this question was answered, so forgive me if I'm being redundant. But could you answer whether or not, if you are currently or have you in the past been involved with a sexual relationship with a black male?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And how do you think that has contributed to your desire to raise a black male child?
Well, I think that being in a relationship with a black male certainly opened my eyes further to many of the realities that black men face in their day-to-day lives. So I was more attuned and became more attuned to a lot of dynamics and interactions that a black man faces, in very mundane situations, and I think some of those situations, were certainly compounded when we were together in public, and I think that if anything, it just opened my eyes a lot more to the realities that I was dealing with, and that people of color are dealing with.
So would you say then that even though you witnessed secondhand the sort of victimization that your black male partner had to endure, despite witnessing that secondhand, you still felt it necessary to adopt a black male child? I'm trying to understand what the logic would be to why would a person voluntarily take on that added difficulty, a white person who is a beneficiary of white privilege.
In understanding that, why I would still proceed to adopt a black male?
Yes.
Well, I mean, one thing, I didn't know whether the baby who was born was going to be a male or a female. So, but I think that again, I think that whether a black male is raised in a family of color with black parents or with white parents, that child is still going to face all kinds of racism, and even some black children who are raised in black families aren't necessarily talking about racism in a real active way or being prepared for how to deal with racism. So I think there's a lot of different ways that families navigate these things. I don't think that just because one has a white parent that necessarily puts a child who is black at a disadvantage. In my case, I think that we may be talking about race more so than some of his classmates who are black, and just hearing some of their comments and conversations, I think sometimes my son has some vocabulary and some understanding even some of his peers may not quite have yet, because they may not have had some of those conversations at home yet. So I'm not saying that my parenting is any better than anyone else's, but I am saying that I am deeply committed to addressing the issues of racism and equipping my son with some of the skills and consciousness that he's going to need to help navigate this very complex world.
Hang tight, caller at 5301. I'm going to try to get some of the other folks, and if we have time before the program wraps up, I will get back to you. Again, our guest, Mr. Terry Keleher. He is the director of the Midwest office of the Applied Research Center, a national racial justice think tank. Person who called in 5404. Your line is open. Please go right ahead.
Hello. I wanted to ask the Mr. Keleher if was there a financial process involved in the adoption, and if so, did the mother of the child benefit in any kind of way from that?
There is a financial process to it, and no, the mother did not benefit in any way from that.
Okay. Thank you, 5404. Actually, before I get to the next caller, someone emailed a question in. Thank you, Art Destiny. She's been a long-time listener. Her question, or actually, I guess there are two. Is there anyone in your adopted son's life that he calls mom? I'm not following the logic on why the boy couldn't call his biological mom when there is no other female in his home. She says it's a setup similar to how ancient Romans, whites, socialized their male children. Her next question, was the mother a teen mom, or were drugs an issue? She says she asks because it would affect the mom's decision-making skills, in addition to her being a victim of racism. Thank you for the questions.
So I have a sister who is very involved in my son's life. I travel frequently for my job, and when I'm traveling, my son stays with my sister and brother-in-law, and he often refers to my sister as Mom. He fully knows that she is his aunt, but he prefers to call her Mom, which is fine with us. And he refers to his birth mother as his birth mother. And he's not confused. He also has a godmother, who's an African-American woman, and he has godfathers who are African-American. Just like any family, kids learn who's who and who loves them and who cares for them, and so sometimes they come up with their own names, and sometimes they take the names you give them. But so that's the arrangement in terms of the mom question. What was your second question, if you could remind me?
The second question, was the mother a teen mom, or were drugs an issue?
The mother was not a teen mom, and she claims to have not used drugs during the pregnancy.
Do you suspect that was not true, and or what about before the pregnancy?
I don't know. I have no way of knowing.
Interesting. I just want to say I was reeling a little bit. You said he calls your sister Mom. Is that accurate, because he stays with her frequently when you travel?
Yep.
Okay. I was just, you referenced the biological mom as his nice aunt earlier in the program, and he calls his dad's sister, who would be his aunt, Mom. Even though you said he does reference his biological mom as, his biological mother. I was just, it was confusing me.
Well, I said he thinks of her as sort of an aunt-like figure. I didn't say he calls her aunt because he doesn't.
Right.
He calls her by her first name, which is what she prefers.
Okay. I'm just saying you did use that term. You said it's like having a nice aunt.
Yes, I did. And I think that's how he thinks of her, as just another like relative in his life. But he knows that she is the one who carried him to birth, and he knows exactly her role in his birth and currently in his life.
Person who called in 8162, your line is open.
Greetings, everyone. It's a great show. Thanks, Gus. Thanks, guest. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. I had a couple of questions real quick. First of all, I wanted to tell your guest, Mr. Keleher, that Gus is excellent with the children, and I encourage you to listen to the show, and also Justice. And I'm sure your son would be, he might enjoy talking to the other non-white children that participate. So listen to the archive show and determine for yourself. My question is, do you have a white family, and do you have a relationship with that family?
I do have a white family, mostly white. I have a sister who's married to an African-American man, and their child is biracial, black girl. But most of my siblings and my parents are white.
And did you have you encountered any kind of racial attitudes from your white family? And what kinds of things did you do to contradict or correct their attitudes or change their attitudes to keep them from harming your son?
Fortunately, we were raised in a family that strongly believes in racial justice. Even though I grew up in the white suburbs of Chicago, my parents fought for open housing, and much to the dismay of many of their own friends, they were very active in trying to break open barriers for people of color. And my father was the head of the local Human Relations Commission, and I remember on one occasion when I was just about 9 years old, he got to introduce Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King at our local college. So we grew up in an environment where racism was not tolerated. But again, that doesn't mean that people didn't have a lot of unconscious racism. So I think that when my sister married an African-American man, that also probably broke down a few more barriers in our family, because I think we, in getting to know his family and, just beginning to normalize that dynamic of having people of color around our holiday dinner tables and, things like that. That I think changed things even further for us. Certainly when I brought my black boyfriend home to Thanksgiving dinner, that I'm sure pushed people's minds a little wider open than they may have been. I think that I'm fortunate to have come from a family that, believes pretty deeply in racial justice and has been active in a lot of racial justice struggles. My sister's husband, the one who my son stays with, he's been working, heading up a fair housing organization for more than 40 years, fighting racial discrimination and doing tests of when people try to get housing. Often they do what they sometimes call a sandwich test. They send a white person look at a house, and then they'll send a black person and then another white person of comparable income and background around the same time, and they'll routinely find that the black person was unable to get shown a property, or it suddenly became unavailable. So a lot of his work has been dedicated to documenting discrimination and suing landlords and all that. So fortunately, our family has been, a fairly safe and accepting place for my son to be, but I also know that as he grows up and he becomes, a middle-aged or a middle schooler or an adolescent or a teenager, he'll have a lot more questions about, who are all these white folks sitting around this table with me and why and all that. So I expect that there will be a lot of critique and a lot of challenging that we'll still have to encounter. This is by no means an easy, rosy path to be going down. There's going to be all kinds of further learning and changing that will occur along the way.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
What kinds of tools are you using, or have you developed, or have you found useful in helping your son develop a armor in the war against racism? And does your son witness you fighting racism, and how? And I'll just listen to your answer. Thank you.
Sure. One of the communities we're connected to, it's an organization called PACT, P-A-C-T, pactadopt.org. They have an annual camp for families that are raising kids of color, mostly white families, but also families of color as well, some black families who've adopted black kids, but mostly the kids are adopted. But at that camp we go to in the summer, they very much talk about racism and identity and white supremacy, and they provide the kids with some tools to have conversations with others. For example, when I'm out in public with my son, there often are questions about the nature of our relationship and questions about adoption and things like that. One of the things they worked with the kids last summer with was how to answer those questions, and that they have choices about the ways they answer those questions. They can choose to be educational if they want to educate people about adoption or about race. They can choose to keep whatever they want private if they want to. If they see the question as intrusive or the questioner as intrusive, they have the right to keep whatever information they want private. So part of it is just teaching kids the skills, and a lot of those workshops are taught by adult adoptees of color who have been through the experience of adoption and have been through the experience of racism as both a young person and as adult. So that's an example of the kinds of skills. And then in terms of whether he sees me fighting racism, yes, he comes to school board meetings sometimes with me when I'm challenging our superintendent. He comes to rallies with me when we're protesting things. He sees when I'm writing articles. He's been to some trainings that I do, so he knows that a lot of what my work is about fighting racism.
I just want to throw this in so you all can think about the sincerity of white people who allege to be working against racism. Mr. Keleher said he's taken his son to rallies, adopted son to rallies about racism, I presume, not willing to have his son talk on the telephone to us about racism. Come to your own conclusions. Person who dialed in 8067. Did you have a question for Mr. Keleher?
Yes. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes,
I wanted, well, part of the issues that I see, especially in our community, is that people of color have big problem holding not just white people, but people accountable across the board. So I had a question for your guest as far as accountability. I want to know if within, all of his efforts towards racism, if he teaches his adopted son the accountability of whites and his own personal accountability in this, even though, of course, he was not there hundreds of years ago shipping people here. I would like to know if he teaches his personal accountability along with all white people's accountability in this entire struggle.
Well, it's a complicated question because, though I said earlier in the program that I believe that I am a racist, in that I do have a lot of unconscious bias, as the host mentioned, there's probably even some conscious bias as well. I think that I also have to make my son feel safe, and so to walk around the house telling him I'm a racist, I don't think would be a constructive dynamic. So that's not the kind of conversation I would have at this point with him. But I do make sure that our social circles and our political circles include a lot of people of color. And I'm pretty public and open about the decisions I've made and the actions I take. And I've put those out to public scrutiny, just as my willingness to be on this call. And my writing the article that I did and putting that out to thousands and thousands of people who've read it and shared it. That's part of the way I am accountable, is that I'm open about my actions and my decisions. But I also know that at the same time, that's the way I choose to live my life. I choose to be open and to be sort of to be a fighter for justice, to be an activist. I don't know if that's the same kind of life my son wants. So I have to make sure that I'm sensitive to where he's at with things, and when he wants to go to something, I'll explain what it is, and if he wants to do it, we'll do it, and if he doesn't, we won't do it. But I have to recognize that he's in a different place, and may in the future be he could be in a totally different place than I am around social justice and racial justice and activism and things like that, or we may be right on the same page, but we'll have to see what that brings in the future.
Thank you for your response. I did want to clarify and just very quickly give my reason.
Hang tight 1 second, please, caller. Thank you. I wanted to make sure, because we had a lot of people that called, so I wanted to make sure that I got some of the other folks that dialed in. Person who called in from a blocked number, your line is open. Person that called in from a blocked number.
Yes, greetings and good afternoon to everyone. I would like to ask, the first question that I have is to the guest is, do you think your adopted son will grow up to be white identified or succumb to white identification? The second question that I have is, do you teach your adopted son about the bold realities of racism, white supremacy? If so, how do you do this? If not, why not? The third question that I have is, do you teach your adopted son about the history of the black diaspora? The fourth question that I have is, what examples of human genius have you taught your adopted son about? The fifth question that I have is, do you think your adopted son will grow up to be a homosexual, and or effeminized? The sixth and last question.
Hey, hang tight. We're going to stop at 5 because we have a lot of people on the line.
Okay.
Mr. Keleher, do you want to respond to those 5?
Sure, if I can remember them all. First of all, no, I don't think my son will be white identified. He knows very much that he's black, that I'm white, and he refers to himself as black and can articulate the fact that I'm white and he's black and we're different and all that. So no, I don't think he will be white identified. How do I teach him about the bold realities of white supremacy? Again, I think I answered that question earlier. In our day-to-day lives, when I see unfairness or think that it might be useful to point out unfairness.
You said fairness again.
Oh, okay.
Good job, Justice.
Thank you. So when I see injustice or see the potential for it, I try and prepare him for that. So I've certainly had many conversations with him about the role of police in how they often racially profile people of color and punish them more harshly. So he knows that he needs to have his guard up around police because they hold all the power and they can certainly do a lot of harm, but they also can protect and do good. But many of them can be very biased, and he needs to be aware of that. As far as the history of the black diaspora, we've talked more about a little about the civil rights movement in the U.S., about the system of slavery. We certainly have conversations around Kwanzaa. I take them to the Malcolm X Kwanzaa celebration, every year, and we have we have conversations about different people, like Ella Baker and Rosa Parks, who were important in the civil rights movement. So he's aware of some of those folks. But I think again, as he gets older, I think history will become more important. But for a 6-year-old, there's things we certainly have a number of books that we've read about black sports players and things like that. But certainly he's doesn't have a big awareness of history yet. And there was, I'm trying to remember your fourth question about have I given him examples of human genius? Yes, like a lot of the books we get from the library are about a number of black, musicians and artists and sports figures, so he can see himself reflected in different people. And when he grows up, you ask, will he be homosexual or effeminate? I doubt it. If you see my son, he's one of the tougher kids around, and he's very good in sports, and he doesn't fit that feminine stereotype, but he doesn't know, nor I know what his sexual orientation will be. We've had conversations about that. He understands sexual orientation. He understands transgender people. He understands race and biracial people. So I think he has a wide awareness of the variation of human beings, and I think that he also knows that even parts of himself he doesn't fully understand or know yet, but those will unfold as we go along. And when I ask him, he thinks he's straight, and who knows? So. But I don't think that he or anyone would characterize him at this point as effeminate.
I'm just contrasting again. You said your son understands transgender people at age 6, but it might be difficult for him to grasp the concept of white supremacy. That's a person who called in from a blocked number, different person from a blocked number. Did you have a question for Mr. Keleher, different person from a blocked number?
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Greetings to you, Gus, Justice, and to the guest. My question that I have for the guest is this. Since since this guest knew that embarking on this lifestyle, he would not be able to reproduce and have children, does he believe it's grossly unfair for this child to bring this child
in? Now you're using the term fair. Gosh, it's leaking.
Oh, it's grossly inappropriate to bring this child, especially a black child that you said you know from your past dating experience with black males, and how society will treat them. Do you think it would be grossly unjust of you to bring this black boy into a situation like this, being raised by a parent that's transgender, homosexual, or whatever the lifestyle that you were in?
No, I don't. I don't think it's unfair. But again, if you want to disagree with me, that's fine. Nor do I think that homosexuality or heterosexuality is necessarily a lifestyle. I think those are just a part of who a person is. So homosexuals don't have any more of a lifestyle than heterosexuals do. That's often just a way of sort of minimizing their whole humanness. So, no, I actually think that my son will end up with a pretty deep and wide sensibility of a lot of different kinds of people and a lot of different kinds of dynamics to the human condition and to our society. So, I don't see it as a disadvantage. I have many friends who are raising many lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender friends who are raising children, and their children are just as healthy as any children.
But you didn't answer the question, Gus. If what I was trying to get you to understand is that you understand, as a person who is involved in a same-sex relationship, you would not be able to reproduce. But yet still you think it was necessary for you to develop your parental skills by adopting this child of a different ethnicity to bring him to raise this child. That is what I was trying to get you to understand.
You want me to understand that you think that is...
No, I was trying to get you to comprehend. What I was saying is that you know you would never be able to reproduce. Same-sex do not reproduce biologically.
Right. Yeah.
But yet still you went out with the understanding that you would still like to be a parent and bring a child into that relationship.
Right.
Not knowing or not comprehending that perhaps this child, I could potentially damage this child by exposing them to certain lifestyles that is not normal, that the majority of society does not look upon as being normal.
Well, again, it's a matter of opinion. It may be damaging to them, but it may not be. So I think that I don't think it will be. But the jury's still out. It may be the hardest thing in the world for him to navigate all of this. He may be mocked for having a gay dad, and he probably will be by some people. But I also think that he will grow up with some deeper understandings than many people will, because he's had to deal with issues of race, issues of adoption, issues of sexuality in a first-hand way that many kids may not have that experience. And through that experience, I think he will develop an appreciation for the diversity of human beings. And my guess is that he will be more understanding and respectful of a broader array of people than many folks in this society are.
Even white people, I suspect. Even white people.
Yep.
The person who called in 3358, did you have a question for Mr. Keleher?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Hotep. Sir, I'm not privy to if you've already answered this question or not, but what I wanted to know is, from the previous caller's question was similar to mine, but I didn't hear why you chose a black child or a child of a different ethnicity? How come you didn't choose a white child? And my second question, how come you didn't choose to make a child of your own seed? Those are two questions.
Sure. So again, it was not an easy and simple answer as to why I chose to adopt a black child, but I did think that there may be some insights and consciousness and awareness and commitment that I could bring to that kind of arrangement, so that is what I chose to do. I looked at a lot of the statistics and looked at what kind of kids were in foster care the longest and who was moved around the most and everything like that. And to me, it made sense that there was an availability of a lot of black kids who often were not treated well by the public welfare system or the social support systems that we have, and so I just gravitated more towards adopt someone with some of those needs that a white kid might not have. I looked at the competition that there was for white kids, and that sort of turned me off. There was a lot of agencies that wouldn't even place kids of color. They only dealt exclusively with white children, and I didn't really want to have anything to do with those kind of adoption agencies. So there were a number of factors that went into why I chose that. And I can't remember your second question.
Let's see. I don't see him on the line. I was going to open this line back. 335. Your line is open. You want to ask that second question one more time?
Yes, thank you. The second question was, why didn't you choose to have a child of natural means?
I considered that. There are different ways to do that. You can be a sperm donor. You can even get a surrogate to carry your kid and all that. None of that made sense to me. There's already kids who are in need of a family, kids who are either already born or soon to be born, and that didn't make sense to me. I wasn't strongly attached to my own genes, so I was more attracted to the option of adoption, where I felt like there were already kids in need that made sense to have families and permanent families rather than have them have to go through temporary and foster care arrangements.
We're going to get Mr. Keleher out of here on time. Someone has a quick final question. I'm going to pick 7908. 7908, if you have a quick final question for Mr. Keleher.
Yes, sir. Thanks for coming on the show and sharing your time. Can I be heard?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, I definitely disagree with, this arrangement, but, it nevertheless is here. I find it ironic that you said your son thinks he's heterosexual versus, you saying that, he knows he's heterosexual and that you encouraging him to adopt that heterosexual lifestyle. And that's just a comment. And my question is a simple yes or no. You mentioned earlier that you said sex was between consenting adults. And would that same thing apply in the future if your son does grow up to find himself a homosexual? That a relationship between you and he would be considered off limits, since he would be an adult and you're an adult, and you guys don't have any blood ties. And I'll listen to your response. And it's just a simple yes or no question.
Well, I would consider that off limits. Yeah, I don't believe in child abuse or pedophilia or anything like that, so the answer would be no. I find it to be, an offensive question because I think there's a lot of assumptions about gay people being sexual predators, and that's where there's some parallels to when I mentioned there are some parallels to race, just as people who are like black men are thought of as sexual predators. There's a similar stereotype to gay people, and I know that those dynamics are very different from each other, but some of the ways that prejudice and hate operates, there are some parallels, and that's an example of it. So I do consider the question offensive, and I hope that you will give some thought to that. But I'm not encouraging my son's sexuality in any direction. I'm encouraging him to become the beautiful, perfect person that he is, and I will continue to love and support his development in every way that I can.
Great. I'm going to stick by what we said. It is, I think, 4 o'clock your time, Mr. Keleher. Thank you so much for coming on the program and sharing information. Appreciated the dialogue. I hope folks will go to colorlines.com. You can read more and follow your work. Thank you so much. We definitely will keep an eye on what you're working on.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. It's been great.
Thank you, sir. We'll be in touch.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon. Context of White Supremacy, Gus T Renegade and Justice. I hope you all are sharing the programs, posting on Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back, and I'll see if any of the folks that called in, if you have any comments you would like to share. Context of White Supremacy.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open-source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Our people are very serious about not being very serious. Meanwhile, white people are very serious about playing hardball against us. And this hardball is called genocide.
Context of White Supremacy. Thank you. I should back up and thank everyone. Thank Back of the Bus for constructing the Facebook page. It has been a very constructive tool for combating racism, white supremacy, and Tater Pie. I attempted to get her on the line, and Skype was not cooperating correctly for her account. But she created the other Facebook page, which is facebook.com RWSWJ. You can just type that in, and it'll take you to the other Facebook page. But this program directly from the Facebook page. I believe it is on the one that is linked on the show page for the cows, where someone posted an article about Mr. Keleher, and I think I don't even know if they recommended or suggested that I attempt to have him on the program, but I definitely thank them for sharing, because I didn't know about Mr. Keleher until I saw that post, And I definitely think it was constructive to hear from one of these folks, because I feel like we've had all these conversations, Dr. Welsing and other people, about homosexuals and so-called homosexuals and them adopting black children. Really interesting to get to talk to one of these folks live and in person. Wow. I don't even know what to say. Like, he got the child right out of the womb. Like, whoa, that is crazy. Whoa. Anyway, yeah, good suggestion. Thank you. I'm trying to see if I can find it. Yeah, I see it. I would give the person's name out, but I will mispronounce it. Yeah, but it was on the Facebook page. So now I hope you all found it constructive. The book that's in the description for people who are listening at Blog Talk Radio, it's titled Hard Lessons. It is a book about pedophilia and racism, white supremacy. It is a white male teacher in a tragic arrangement sexual molestation of one of his non-white female students. I kind of wanted to set a tone for what I wanted people thinking about a different victim. Nana Mightywick asked if I would have been thinking about pedophilia and, this admitted racist, Mr. Keleher, thinking, this guy is most likely molesting this child. No, that thought would have not even crept in my mind. I would have probably looked at you crazy if you had suggested such a thing. Even 2 years ago, and I was informed about racism, white supremacy 2 years ago. I think even 2 years ago, maybe not 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I think I still might have been like, what? That's, you're reaching a little bit. Like, I don't really like these white people, but, that's, I don't think so. And, just because he's so-called gay, that doesn't mean that, there's a problem or anything, you should be suspicious about. Like, white people have done a really good job social engineering on this sexual confusion. In fact, Mr. Fuller, when he speaks about it, he consistently says it's a wrap. It's a done deal. White people have pretty much got this on lock at this point. It's taken root, and we are off and running. I hope it can be corrected, because this thing can go real bad. But it's mind blowing that to just think that a lot of non-white people, I suspect I think it would be true to say most non-white people, most black people, they wouldn't, get too upset about this. They wouldn't, be willing to say, that Mr. Keleher, I'm real suspicious of him, and this is representing the worst of racism, white supremacy. I think most victims would not take that position and would even get upset with you. I think the gentleman called the program yesterday and said, he would just make true statements, and people would get upset and fuss at him on Facebook. I think this is one. If you took that position that this is totally incorrect and this represents, the worst of racist man and racist woman, they would, first line of defense for Mr. Keleher, admitted racist, would be a lot of victims, my family members included. Justice, did you have any thoughts about what the guest shared on today's program?
Yes, I do, but before I go into, before I share my thoughts, I just wanted to say I stayed up late last night, and I went to bed really late. I just wanted to add on to that.
Right on.
Okay. He said multiracial. I was going to ask him that, but oh well. And I suspect he was practicing racism when he used the word fair, and he used it 4 times. I suspect it was either 4 or 5 times. You had to keep catching him for saying the word fair, and he was trying to blame that you said something that you did not do. White people do that a whole lot so they can get away with things. But as far as that, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Rest is important. Rest is important. Yeah, Mr. Keleher, I knew fair was going to be important. I hope people contact me, my request that he not use the term at the beginning. I hope that stands out, like, whoa, he asked him specifically not to say fair, and then he went on and said it, I think 5 times during the program. Same thing happened with Tim Wise. These are the white people who, tell you I'm against racism, white supremacy, and, let's go people of color. And I'm also rooting for the gay people. Yay, gay people, gay rights. These are the same people. And then, they're associating fair with correctness, beauty. Even after you request, please stop doing that. They continue to do it. Hey, you can decide for yourself if you think this is just an old habit, and they just have a tough time, they've been doing it for a long time, or if you think this is evidence of their dedication to the system of white supremacy. Obviously, I think it's the latter, and I want to be very clear. I think every white person in a system of white supremacy is racist. Every single, there are no exceptions. That's what it means to be white. The only reason I use the term suspected racist is to not name call, period. That goes for babies, invalids, paraplegics, any other white people you can think of. Yes, reason, explanation, as long as the system of white supremacy exists, if you are white, you are on that team. If you're not able to function, I suspect that when you are able to function, you're going to go back to practicing racism. And I suspect if you are no longer able to function, when you were functioning, you were practicing racism. You're on the team. If you want to think about it using a sports analogy, you want to think football, when a player gets hurt, they're on injured reserve, they're sitting on the bench, they're not active, they're not able to function as an athletic player. However, they're still on the team. They still get all the benefits. They ride the tour bus. You sit on the bench. You are with the team. That's the same way I think of white people, and it's just about being strategic. I'm not interested in making space for any white person to not be racist. This is terrorism against non-white people. We need to make a very clear distinction about white people, and it's based on logic. There have been tons of white people who have come on this program and have given a very clear explanation as to why that is. I would start with Jacqueline Badalora. Outstanding program back in May. Not that I did anything. She has great information. And I mean, direct from the source. She's an admitted racist white supremacist too. Jacqueline Badalora, May 2010. With that, please invest in the program. Would be super helpful. Links are below in the description. I got my 1-year subscription on Skype with the world account. I can now dial 40 different countries. So we will be seeing to get folks from all over the planet on the context of white people. Not interestingly, but I mean, a matter of routine in the system of white supremacy, none of the 40 countries that I can now call anytime are on the continent of Africa.
Double whammy.
That said, we're still going to work around it, and I'm real excited about making the program more global. And all of the UK listeners, it now got much easier to get you on the program. If you have a Skype account, that would be great. If you don't, no worries. I can dial your phone. So just let me know. Ross43, no excuses now. If you got a phone, you can be on the program. Any of the other folks, love to get more of the folks who are listening in the UK. Now I can explore and see if these are non-white people listening out there or if these are just racists who are listening from other parts of the planet. So, looking to really get into the global nature of racism, white supremacy. With that said, as I said, invest. And Justice, I forgot to get her email and blog out yesterday, so we'll make sure to do it twice. I'll say it once, and then I'll go to her to get her to do it before the program ends. The email is justice.asap@yahoo.com, justice.asap@yahoo.com, and the blog, justdojustice.today.blogspot.com. justdojustice.com. Again, justdojustice.blogspot.com. She also appreciates investments at her blog. People that called in with a hand up, your lines are open. Folks who called in who have hands up. And if you called in and you didn't speak before and you want to say anything now, press 1 and I can get your line open.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's always nice to know that I'm, what is the word he used, available, or the little black children was more available. And I do like the question that piggybacked right behind mine with when the brother asked him if he were to have would it be okay to have sexual contact, or is it off limits? I thought that was a pertinent question. He got offended, but obviously he must not pay attention to the news sources. But I thought it was a very pertinent question. Very good question.
Can I be heard, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Gus and Justice. What was troubling? Two things that stood out for me on this interview. One was when he said that this child looked at his mother as an aunt, but his sister, Mr. Keleher's sister, as his mother. This white woman the child is looked at as a mother figure, but his own mother that birthed him is not looked upon as a mother. And when he said he was not attracted to his own gene, when the other caller asked him, why didn't he want to use his own sperm to have a child, he was not attracted to his own gene to give birth. So what's wrong with your gene that you did not want to use it in order to reproduce life? You want to have a life. You want to be a father. Why do you want to come out here and take a black child and damage this child and not use your own gene?
That's why I said that the question that piggybacked behind that was, when the kid grows up and becomes an adult and be able to make choices, would it be okay? That's a great question. Obviously, that the Woody, whatever his name is, thought it was okay. Why wouldn't he? It's a great question. So if you have no ties,
correct,
to it being your child, somebody else's child, then it's an easier decision for him. That's why I asked that question. I was setting him up, but my man, I didn't realize how much time he is. Yeah, he really shot it. He made a 3-pointer on that one. That was a good one.
Another thing that was interesting is when when he was asked that question, he said he got offended. He came back with something racial, something about comparing racial. So was he trying to be on the offensive? And if he was, why did he use race immediately to go on the offensive? So I think that was kind of interesting as well.
So race is always the flashcard that they always pull out whenever they want to get out of a situation. They throw that up as a smoke screen to get you off of your game so that they can come up with something else different. Why? These people, they're slick when it comes to words, metaphors. They throw out these false herrings to get you off your game. And this is why I'm so glad for Gus there, because he's so calm. His voice never changes. He doesn't get hostile. He doesn't raise his voice. He's just very firm with his questioning, and that's what throws white people off, because they know before we would tend to get upset, use profanities, and raise our voices and whatever. But in this case, they don't have that out. They could either hang up the phone and leave, or like most guests do, they all of a sudden they have an appointment they need to go to, when the questions get a bit more uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think he had a double meaning though when he used that comparison. I think also he used it one as a red herring and also to try to be offensive. So I think he had like a double meaning when he used that.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Can I be heard? One thing that stood out to me particularly about this individual is he said that sex is between two consenting adults, but he referenced his black male partner as his boyfriend. And it's rather interesting when you listen to the language of some folks when they refer to black men as boyfriend as opposed to a man. Mm-hmm. And I've been noticing this particularly, it's a consistent thing in society in general where grown men are referred to as boyfriends. And another thing that stood out to me is he had that ready example of his parents introducing Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King almost as if, and then his sister is married to a black male as well. And that strikes me as this seems to be a family that uses black people as a shield in order to gain access to positions where people can now look at them as the nice white liberal family.
Yeah, trust. Position of trust is what they're trying to get to.
Right, yeah. That's why I asked him how come he didn't use his own seed to get that across. You know, take care of your own child, go through the trouble of feeding the woman, take care of the woman, to have your child, and then separate it. It seemed like it was inconvenient for him to do that. He just rather stop by the store, pick up a black child, and hey, we're on my way.
And it was also interesting that he pointed out that, and he repeated it, that there was no compensation granted to the black mother. So the compensation was granted to whatever adoption apparatus. So it almost seemed as if that was an auction block. He would rather pay them a fee than this black woman who he clearly indicated had a number of other children and was not in a financial position to take on the responsibility of another child. And it would seem that the very least he could have done is help her in her financial distress.
Correct.
And obviously she was a drug user, don't you think?
There has to be some drug or alcohol involved, because what normal black woman would give birth to her child and turn it over to a white homosexual? I don't care how crazy I am. I wouldn't do that.
Right, because
I meant to ask him that question. I meant to ask him that question. Did she know you was a homosexual?
Gotta be heard. Yeah, the first question that I asked him was, do you think your adopted son will grow up to be white identified or succumb to white identification? In my opinion, I don't think he answered the question truthfully, because, you know, he admitted on the program that he was a racist. So he adopted this child when he was a newborn. There's no way in the world that he's not going to grow up being identified with whiteness. I mean, the man admitted that he was a racist. So
you're right. And when Gus asked if the child could come on the program, he said he takes the child to rallies. The child knows the difference between transgender, homosexual, heterosexual. But yet still he would not let Gus question the child about racism, white supremacy, which is going to be very, very important in this child's life. He didn't want this child to be exposed to this type of questioning.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
It just seems like he's, like back some echo somewhere. It seems like they're trying to build up allies. So, of course, he wouldn't want him to come on a show that's going to, reveal to him, how racist man and racist woman have used homosexuality. And I just found it ironic that he, and I wanted to ask him a question about when he said his son thinks that he's gay, and he thinks that he's straight, and I bet you 99 cents to a dollar, that when he would probably tell you that he knew he was gay, as a little boy, like most homosexuals do. So the irony in the fact that he would say his son thinks that he's straight, just kind of threw me off. But it definitely seems like, this is just something eerie about this whole conversation with him. Mm-hmm. That just didn't sit right. That he's definitely, setting this child up for a extreme life of confusion.
And he said he was born that way at the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh, should I hear the beginning?
Did he say that he went
to that I'm standing here in New York City, in Greenwich Village, and I'm looking at two white males holding the hand of approximately a 7 or 8 year old black child crossing the street. I think that's rather interesting. Pretty interesting.
What I think is that, which is why I asked him, because your sexuality influenced your child, whether or not the child might be curious to say, okay, my daddy does this with his partner, let me try and see if I might like it, going through his sexual experimentation. So this child could go through that when he reaches puberty to try and have sex with another male. So it's a very dangerous lifestyle, and I find it to be very, very improper that this mother would turn over her child to this white man, a homosexual, to be raised, a black boy, a highly melanated black child at that.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that just echoing on him having family members, suspected racist family members who are engaging in sexual intercourse with non-white people. When Pam was on the program earlier this week, and I said that I think a strategy of racist man and racist woman engaging in sexual intercourse, it was about white people, so-called wiggers, white people who act like black people. That's what I'm told, that, these people engaging in sexual intercourse with non-white people is so that they can give the appearance, can confuse people, even themselves, into believing that they're not racist. I'm hearing some noise in the background. If you could mute your line, that would be helpful. Thank you. But yeah, to confuse people into thinking that they are not racist because they're having sex with non-white people. And I said, you see examples of this in films. I think that plays out. I'm still hearing background noise. If you could mute your line, that would be helpful. It just really it reduces the quality of the program. But yeah, he in the film, the Monsters Bald, I think that's the whole symbolism of the film. Billy Bob Thornton's character, Billy Bob Thornton's character, he is not racist by the end of the film. He names the station after his non-white female partner, and he has made the transformation. And I think that plays out often with white people, and I think with his family being sexually engaged with non-white people, I think that's the same thing. To convince, hey, we're not racist. I got a non-white child, and we're definitely not racist here. I also wanted to echo the eeriness. Man, I felt like Jeffrey Dahmer was on the line at times. It just really gave that feeling. Some of the things that he said, just even the photograph. I felt like it was a really calm Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, he didn't get upset about anything. He didn't, raise his voice. He never got agitated, no matter what was said. Tone never changed. It totally felt like, Jeffrey Dahmer, who also was engaged in sodomizing young black males. Just really gave that opinion, and I hope people do that research on Jeffrey Dahmer. We're going to try and make that program happen to get one of the people who did a biography of him on the program. But it just really gave that feeling throughout the program, and I hope people think about that. Even folks, if you're a little more confused and you're thinking you're crazy, Gus, this is a good white guy. this good white guy works for a national racial justice think tank. I mean, I just feel like this is a really dangerous white person, not just, some low-level racist. I feel like this is a really dangerous white person, admitted homosexual, and a member. To get his correct title, he is the director of the Midwest office of the Applied Research Center, a national racial justice think tank. I just wanted to make that clear, and I will hush now. I close the mics because that's really irritating, just to me, on a lot of levels. When there's a lot of background noise and music is playing and the television is on, people are doing dishes. It's just really irritating. It's difficult for me to maintain my train of thought at times, and just from a broadcast perspective, it really disrupts the quality of the program to have people listening in and all that background noise is coming in. So if you could please respect the program. If you're in a noisy area, no problem. Just use your mute button when you're not speaking, when you want to talk. Make sure you're in a quiet area. Say what you want to say, and then if you can use your mute button, that is super helpful. Thank you, and I'm opening everybody's line back up.
Gus, you was right when you said remind you of someone who is sick. And like Pam said in her broadcast about there's something defective about these people, their gene pool or something is off with them. Because looking at this man, there seemed to be something slightly off with him. And I'm almost sure that his sister's husband is a highly melanated, non-white person. And it seems that they're trying to regenerate their gene pool, because if he said he was not attracted to his own gene, it tells you something, that he knows that there's something wrong with his gene. Why isn't it that he doesn't want to use his own gene? His sister married someone outside of her gene pool.
Can I be heard? Hello? Can I be heard? Hello?
Can you hear me? Because it's kind of quiet.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Can I be heard?
I can hear you guys too.
Okay, good deal. I just wanted to get in real quick. Interesting that he after pumping this young victim with confusion since birth for 6 years, even after that, and like Gus just said, he seems to be a high-level, refined racist. But even after 6 years of direct confusing a victim, even from like a parental role, he was still concerned, or didn't want to have. He was concerned of what the effect of correct and accurate information about racism and white supremacy would have on the child. So that's encouraging for me, because it seems even after 6 years of having direct exposure to confusing information from a racist, they're still concerned that all that can go out the window with some accurate information about racism and white supremacy. So sounds like keep on doing the correct thing, Gus and Justice, getting the correct information out there for people to hear. I would be curious to see, at what age, maybe if I don't know, did he state his adopted the child that he removed? Did he state his name, the child's name?
No.
Okay, it'd be interesting. I could see maybe around another 4 years, 5 years, or something like that, if we're still in a crummy system of white supremacy, that then a racist such as the admitted racist does on the show might say, I feel pretty comfortable that the confusion is entwined enough to where I don't care who he talks to, he's not gonna be able to get clear at this point. So I thought that was interesting.
Do you know, Gus? Can I be heard?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what racial justice is at all?
I do not. Racial justice, social justice. People have a tendency to attach other terms to the word justice, which I think creates confusion. But yeah, I don't use that term. I just stick to justice. I don't have any thought in my mind that Mr. Keleher is about justice in any way, shape, or form. So I didn't even need his definition for that.
Yeah, we should have asked him. I'm sorry. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
You should have asked him. I should ask him also if he takes his son to gay pride meetings as well.
That would have been interesting. Man, that's creepy.
If for the website, for the game that I told you that I shared yesterday. When was the last show?
Yesterday.
Okay, yeah. The game that I shared yesterday. I probably will not be able to send it to any of you guys because it's a school website, and so I was looking it up yesterday. It showed different pictures and different websites, but I didn't show the actual game that I was talking about. So.
I thought it was interesting as well. He has an article, Mr. Keleher. He has an article that is relating so-called homosexuality and what is called gay rights with the so-called civil rights movement. And he has a quote from Julian Bond, where Julian Bond is comparing racism, white supremacy to homosexuality. Julian Bond.
Yeah, I'm glad I was about to remind you.
I know Julian Bond, but not that means anything. Another victim on the plantation. Just even when I was
the city council member here in Atlanta, Michael Julian.
He even when I was confused about white supremacy, that stood out to me as something was suspicious or potentially incorrect about him having sex with a white person. But he has this article where he is quoting from a Julian Bond speech where he's saying that, so-called homosexuality is a really important issue, and, so-called gay rights, it's just like civil rights, and it's all incorrect, and it's all the same thing. Let's see if I can pull it up, if there are any interesting tidbits I can share.
I heard that article before on a radio show here in Atlanta from that same Julian Bond. You see, that's the whole idea with the civil rights movement, was why these people, they funded the movement, because they know further down the line that this is going to be what is going to be the ultimate outcome, that the gay rights movement was going to become a part of it. So now they have all of these confused non-white people believing that this is a civil right. This is not anything to do with civil rights, because we have no concept of the color of skin that you're going to be born into. These people make a choice. It's like if I make a choice to rob a store, I have self-control over what I do. And if I choose to involve myself in a homosexual relationship, then that is the choice I made. It has absolutely nothing to do with a person's color of skin.
I have the report here. he's quoting directly from a speech that Julian Bond gave. This is on the colorlines.com website. This is from in Black History Month, no less. This is from February 19th, 2008. NAACP Chairman Julian Bond, he's not the chairman currently, I do not believe, in a recent keynote address at the 20th National Conference on LGBT equality. They don't have the I, and I know some of them are LGBTQI and all that. They just got LGBT equality, creating change in Detroit, Michigan. Mr. Bond stated, I believe gay rights are civil rights. I'm scrolling down, skipping through some of what he said. And he says, for some, comparisons between the African American civil rights movement and the movement for gay and lesbian rights seem to diminish the long Black historical struggle with all its suffering, sacrifices, and endless toil. However, people of color ought to be flattered that our movement has provided so much inspiration for others, that it has been so widely imitated, and that our tactics, methods, heroines and heroes, even our songs, have been appropriated by or served as models for others. No parallel between movements for rights is exact. African Americans are the only Americans who were enslaved for more than 2 centuries, and people of color carry the badge of who we are on our faces. But we are far from the only people suffering discrimination. Sadly, so do many others. They deserve the law's protection and civil rights, too. They go on to say Mr. Bond was proud to remind them that the NAACP shall pursue all legal and constitutional means to support non-discriminatory policies and practices against persons based on race, gender, sexual orientation, nationality, or cultural background. I would assert that, number one, in a system of white supremacy, it is very easy for white people to just tell a victim, go out there and read this. We've already wrote it up. Just go out and read it. Don't change a period. Read it exactly the way it is. I would not be surprised at all for certain non-white people that might be one of their responsibilities. That could be possible. And I would also assert that sexual intercourse with white people, when you are white engaged, Julian Bond is married to a suspected racist. When you are white identified, you tend to be approving of, accepting of homosexual behavior. I think there is a strong link between the two. Being white identified, accepting of homosexuality is a huge aspect of being white identified. It's just a core aspect of their culture, and hopefully we'll continue to hammer that point home with the program. I'll hush. Anybody else, if you all had comments?
Has anyone ever seen the movie Adopted with Pauly Shore?
I have not.
I mean, I don't watch a lot of TV, but I'm sitting here right now just relaxing, and I just happen to be thumbing through the programs, and it's let me see here. It's called Adopted. If you have Showtime, I don't know if it comes back on or what. But it's about Pauly Shore going to Africa and adopting a black boy, and it's quite interesting that we just had this conversation with this individual, and then this particular, then just watching this particular program, how it appears that this child is more like a piece of property.
Exotic animal.
Exactly. I mean, you just have to watch it. I mean, I've never seen it before, but I'm hopefully I'm looking forward to it coming on again because I won't be able to finish watching it. But I think we ought to watch this movie or this documentary, whatever it is. But it's called Adopted with Pauly Shore, and he's got him a black woman on his side from Africa. She's an African with straight hair and highlights on her eyebrows. She's in colors in her hair. So I think it'll be interesting to watch to kind of follow up with today's guest. And I think I'm going to go rent it if I don't get a chance to see it again on television.
It is all about these white people. We have Madonna, we have Angelina Jolie, Tom Cruise, all of these so-called Hollywood types who have adopted these black children. And the mainstream Americans, they believe that, they're getting a good home, they're going to be well taken care of and whatever. But there is something wrong with this picture because, to me, these children could have remained in their circumstances with their family, and you could have sent money over there every month to pull the family up from whatever situation they're in and let that child remain there because there are certain so-called cultural aspects and identity that you are not going to be able to give this child. Because if your intent was for this child to be raised as a black person or whatever ethnicity they are, then that's what you would do. But these children will always adopt to whatever parent it is that are raising them. And if the parent is white, then that's the identity they will assume.
Man, I don't mean it. He just examined the boy's teeth like he was a horse. Put his hands in his mouth and looked at his teeth. I got it.
On the movie?
Yes, you got to go get it on this.
Is it a comedy?
I don't know what it is.
It must be a comedy.
I got the
tagline. Normally makes a comedy movie.
Well, it's not a movie. It's not. They don't have lines or anything. It's like a documentary.
What channel is it on? Is it one of those like TLC or Discovery?
I think this is like Borat. I think it's probably set up like Borat because it's listed as a comedy. It's not listed as a documentary. So I think this is probably like a movie that they have made it look like it's a documentary. But, this is just, white people just, doing their silliness. Anyway, yes, the tagline for the film says, for hundreds of, and this came out in 2009. The tagline for the film is, for hundreds of years, Africa has existed in a state of despair. Famine, civil wars, and rampant disease have left the continent without hope. Wow, the entire continent without hope. But for the efforts of Western do-gooders, white people. At first, they arrived with food, Bibles, and the magic of penicillin. More recently, they have hosted rock concerts and sent plane loads of grain. And in the last decade of the 20th century, they arrived and took babies home with them. First, there was Angelina, then Madonna, and now Pauly Shore. The film builds its comedy foundation on the international interest in celebrity adoptions and the debate that surrounds these transactions on both sides of the Atlantic. Sometimes politically incorrect and never scared to tread on manicured toes. This was written by Pauly Shore himself. Came out in 2009.
And he act real feminine too, like in a lot of his movies.
I thought he was, but I'm gonna watch it. I'm sure there's a lot to be learned from it, being that he's a so-called Hollywood insider or whatever. But I'm interested in now that I'm watching, even though it is somewhat of a comedy set in a documentary format. I think there's going to be a lot of truth in it.
It's got the movie poster for the film, and it's got Pauly Shore holding two, looks like a male and a female, but they're both crying.
And I don't know if it's just my picture or if it looks kind of fuzzy maybe, but I think white people did it on purpose. It looks like the female in the picture, the young girl, like one of her hands might have been removed or something. You know, like it got chopped off or something like this. You know, that could just be my fuzzy picture. I don't know.
Yeah, reminiscent of what's his name, Leopold, King Leopold.
The Congo.
Yes, sir.
And that these, you know, they have a street named after him in the Congo, don't they?
I'm sure they do.
And they have a Leopoldville or something like that.
They have a Leopoldville.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to watch this documentary anyway. I'm going to go rent it. I mean, this comedy. Just because it's today's show.
I'm going to watch it too.
Roberts said on the Gus show when she was on about a year ago, when she said that black children are the ones that's funding these adoption agencies as well as the child welfare system, because most of these children, they go into the program and they do not have any hopes of ever adopting these children out, so they stay in there and they have to age out of these programs. So now that the gays are getting a foothold, the gays and the lesbians, they are allowing them access to these children. Normal fostering that myself and anyone else might want to get involved and do, they don't let non-whites get involved with the foster program. They try to discourage you from becoming a part of that program. But they always encourage whites to come in because the pool for white children is slim to none.
Yeah, and the reason I asked him the question I'm sorry, go ahead, Justin.
Speaking of movies, I rented I've rented Life Size, and when I watch, I'm going to pick out the racism in it.
What is that movie called again?
Life Size.
Okay. Is it a kids movie?
It was made by Disney. Yes, I suspect that white people made it for children. Yeah.
That's about dolls, right?
I'm sorry.
Is it about the dolls that life-size dolls?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that.
Okay. I might rent that.
Show? What show was that on, Gus?
It was on the Assassin show, the one that Gus had on.
Yeah, that one.
We need to do a show, Gus, about Walt Disney and the programming that these shows at the Disney Channel is doing to children. If you would like to take on that challenge, because people plop their children down in front of the television and watch all of these Disney shows, and they don't know of the subliminal messages that's being passed to these children.
I know one of the results will be your daughter or son, particularly your daughter, will be interested in dating white people. If you pop them down in front of the TV for long enough years, the result will be, especially if they're watching the Disneys and all that, the result will be, hey, I'm putting Twilight on my wall. I want the white guys or whatever. I mean, that's going to be almost inevitable.
Your sons too, I suspect.
Yes.
I suspect.
Oh
my
God, I feel you. That I can say is true.
I used to be a biggest collector of Disney movies when they came out on DVDs. I used to buy them and collect them for my nieces and nephews when they come over for them to watch. I've discontinued doing that.
Yeah, and the reason I asked him that question about the financial part of the adoption, because I've heard that those adoptions could run you thousands of dollars. So, yeah, I would suspect you'd have to be, pretty well off to even get involved in that process.
National Racial Justice Think Tank
which is probably along the same line of what a Timothy Wise is doing, except they're trying to say that they're trying to perfect racial justice for people of color, when most of the time all they do is just sit around and they talk and don't do anything else but talk. And a couple of my friends, Gus, we listened to your last broadcast that you had with Tim Wise, and we were falling out. When he said he threatened to leave the first time he came on the last show, and then you told, well, if you want to leave, you can leave. Don't threaten to leave. Just hang up. And then he said, oh, okay, I'm going to leave you with your 13 callers. I guess 13 is supposed to be an unlucky number when he made the mention 13.
I suspect with that think tank, they're probably sitting around trying to figure out how to practice a more refined version of racism.
How can we get pregnant black females to give us their children?
Yep.
Reminiscent of kind of like eugenics, huh? No
I want to
doubt.
make sure I ask, too. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
No, I was just saying, no doubt, it's just a part of the plan. Since you can't raise them, we will, and eventually, sterilize you. But go ahead, Gus. I'm sorry.
Just since eugenics came up, I was going to ask if I was the only one who thought that was of interest. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. receiving the Margaret Sanger Award from Planned Parenthood, or was I just, crazy on that?
No, I suspected that same thing.
He didn't know, and like I said, his niece is out here in Atlanta. She is big on this eugenics movement. She's against it, and she's always on all the Fox News and everything else. Alveda King protesting against the abortions and all the different things that she's out here doing.
Was she the one that was involved with the Tea Party thing as well?
Yes, that's her.
Wow.
I think white people, they give awards, like I think you said it, they give awards, when they give awards to black people, it's because that non-white person has done something helpful for the white team, whether they were conscious of it or not conscious of it. But the result was, yep, that person helped us out. Let's, show them our appreciation and to encourage other non-white people to do stuff to help us out.
Look at that doctor that they had on the news in Philadelphia, the one that they shut down his abortion clinic, that they have him up on charges for performing abortions without proper license, having all of the body parts strewn all over the places. And what makes it so refined, Gus, is that they said that he had a room for white patients that were clean and sanitized so that they would not complain to authorities. But the rooms where the non-whites were being treated, it was a pigsty, it was a slaughterhouse.
Wow. I mean, who better to give that award to at that time? And isn't it known that they did pay off preachers?
Yep.
So I mean, who better to give it to than Dr. King to legitimize yourself in the black community?
I kind of came in late. What did he do specifically to receive that award?
They didn't really offer an explanation on the websites that I looked at as to why they selected him. They talked about some of the past recipients of the award, but it was not, or at least it wasn't made clear to me what he was doing that, they felt, yeah, we're going to give this to this guy.
You probably don't even have to do anything. They just want to give it to a prominent figure to let the black community know that, hey, we have Dr. King, this well-known civil rights person. We are giving him this award to get the others in line.
This was in 66, by the way. I believe 66 was the year of the Watts riot in L.A., so I don't know. I don't know, but that's significant, the timing of when he got the award. And I think at that point he had already been speaking publicly against Vietnam. We got like 60 seconds left. We'll be back tomorrow. Brother Polite will be on the program. Again, showtime 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.